The recent raids by ICE in Southern California and across the U.S. are secrets to no one. They've been very obvious and shared both on conventional media and social media. But the basis of those raids is more mysterious. U.S. immigration law is complex, convoluted, and hard to follow at times. It's also knowledge that is essential for those who come to the United States and hope to become residents. We tapped a group of nonprofit immigration attorneys to walk us through the immigration laws and also the situation that's going on with ICE enforcement. Fox 11 News In Depth starts right now. Hello everyone, I'm Hal Eisner and this is Fox 11 News In Depth. The confusion over immigration law and the rights of immigrants is especially challenging in these days when it has such vast impact on so many lives. Joining us to sort out some of the confusion are attorneys from Bet Tzedek, a nonprofit firm that provides free legal services to those that need it the most. With us is Cartagena, President and CEO of Bet Tzedek, and Joanna Fluckey, who is the directing attorney of Kinship and Special Immigrants juvenile status. And I'm really curious. First of all, welcome to both of you. And in recent days, the problems with the U.S. immigration system have come into sharp focus. So, can you walk us briefly through the process and tell us a little bit about immigrants and that come to the United States and what they have to deal with? And let's start with Joanna.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us
Sure.
on this important topic. It is really difficult to come to the U.S. and successfully secure a green card. There's many lawful ways to do that. One of them is coming to the border and telling people you're afraid to go back. That is called asylum. But once they're here, there's no guarantees. They'll be put in proceedings with a judge, with government counsel against them. And at Bet Tzedek, our focus really is on representing children through those proceedings. Our programs represent foster youth, and we also represent children who are seeking guardianships that qualify for special immigrant juvenile status.
And when we talk about Bet Tzedek, that's a Hebrew term for House of Justice, which is what you're dealing with. And I'm glad you explained things the way you did, Joanna, because there are so many pieces to immigration, so many cards, so many words, so many things that we think we know we may not really know. So why don't you kind of pick up on that for a moment? Just tell us a little bit about asylum and how that works.
Yeah, well, one of the things to understand, as Joanna mentioned and you just indicated, is that the immigration code is very complex. And one of the ways to think about it is there are different categories, like asylum. And each category is like a box with different definitions, and you have to very carefully determine whether or not a person qualifies under those definitions. And Joanna can talk about the requirements for asylum, but if one doesn't fit into those definitions, there is no path forward, which is one of the key issues at play in all this confusion. If a person gets detained and if there are efforts to remove an individual, especially under expedited removal, you need to be able to contact an attorney as quickly as possible.
So immigration is simply the process of coming into the country. Asylum is saying, I'm scared to go back to the country I came from.
Yeah, correct. I mean, you can think of asylum as being one of the ways you can immigrate into the United States. It's one of our humanitarian forms of relief. You could also come through a business visa or through if you have family members. But humanitarian relief, which is what we're focused on immigration, is mostly bipartisan, coming from bills like the TVPRA to protect children and say, we should treat children specially under the law, and they are able to come and be here for humanitarian reasons.
Okay, another concept, green cards, right? Green cards, let's talk about them. What are they?
Yeah, so they're referred to as green cards because they were green. That's changed more recently. But it essentially means that you have secured legal permanent residency status. It means permanent. You do have to renew it every couple of years, but it means you have been given permission to remain in the United States. You are not yet a citizen. You then have to apply for citizenship, but it does confer certain protections on you.
At what point are you legal?
When you have that legal permanent residency status, unless, and Joanna can talk about this, there are other protections right before legal permanent residency status.
Right, and I think just to say the term, when are you legal, is a bit confusing, because if you are seeking a status lawfully and going through immigration courts, you're lawfully here to pursue your case. So that's where the right of due process comes in. If you're a human in the soil in the United States, you have a right to due process in your immigration proceedings. So it is lawful for people to be here, going to their immigration hearings, pursuing valid forms of relief like asylum or other forms of relief that allow them to become a lawful permanent resident.
All right, so we hear a lot about legal, illegal. If you have a green card, are you then legal?
Yes, that gives you full permission to live as a resident of the United States, for life. It can be taken away in certain instances for certain serious crimes, but you are a lawful permanent resident if you have a green card.
And how long does this process take?
Oh.
It can
sounds like you're worn out already.
Right. It takes some people years. There's a really large backlog in our immigration courts currently. So people going through this process, it can take years, 3 years to 10 years, 12 years. It's a really arduous process. So that's not like something you just come here and all of a sudden people are coming and becoming lawful permanent residents. It's an arduous journey.
And sometimes when people go to immigration hearings, they're deported.
Yes, that is one of the recent developments. And it's frightening even for us as immigration attorneys and advocates to think about the fact that many of the clients that we represent, which are children, a 6-year-old whose feet can't even touch the ground is asked to sit at a table, answer questions from a judge, and respond to arguments being lobbed at them and at the judge by a seasoned immigration attorney that represents the federal government.
Well, it may seem a little, and I don't mean this to be, silly, but somebody gets a traffic ticket, can they be deported? Because it's an infraction.
That's a really good question. That's not something that would make you inadmissible to the United States. It would not prevent you from getting your green card. But now what we're seeing with heightened enforcement, ICE enforcement, is they're sweeping up more and more broader swaths of people indiscriminately of whether they have a traffic ticket, no traffic ticket, whether they have lawful permanent resident status. And I'm glad you brought up detention at the immigration courts because this is a new policy where we haven't seen before, where ICE attorneys, the Office of Chief Counsel, is working in conjunction with ICE to request a dismissal of their immigration proceedings. So if you're an immigrant going to immigration court alone, you will think the judge has dismissed your proceedings. Meanwhile, they're communicating with ICE, who will then detain them immediately following their hearings. We've seen pregnant women, children put in zip ties, taken to detention facilities, separation, unfortunately, of children from their mothers, and they're put into a process called expedited removal, which is extremely difficult to get an attorney right away. It's a very quick process and really lends itself to be violative of due process rights.
I want to pick up on that when we come back in the next segment. So don't go away, Diego and Joanna. We'll have more questions for you. Coming up next on Fox 11 News In Depth, we delve deeper into recent ICE actions, U.S. deportations, and what protections immigrants, both documented and undocumented, might have. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Fox 11 News In Depth. We're plowing through the complexities of immigration law with two members of the nonprofit law group Bet Tzedek. Let's welcome back Bet Tzedek CEO Diego Cartagena and attorney Joanna Fluckey. And now that we have a little better feel for what immigration law in the United States entails, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. We were talking a moment ago about hearings and deportations. So let's pick that up where we left off.
Yeah, and thanks for diving back in there. So we were going through the deportation process, and I want to remind people that the Supreme Court has told us that deportation is an especially harsh penalty. It's akin to exile. So what you're doing to these people should not be taken lightly. That's basically what the law tells us. Because when you think on what's happening after that, the fallout is that there are U.S. citizen children left here alone, just many children in difficult circumstances, separation of families. Deportation is just such a harsh consequence. And so it's really important that people have access to due process and an attorney to guide them through that.
And I guess before we get any further, people can get help and it doesn't have to cost them, right?
No, it doesn't. So there is free legal aid. Joanna mentioned the stakes at play, and despite the fact that the stakes are so high, you don't have the right to an attorney. But there are organizations like Bet Tzedek, Public Counsel, Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, Immigrant Defenders, Chirla Carecen. We have a wealth of resources here in Los Angeles that can all provide free legal services. And if you visit any of our websites, there are steps to contacting us. All the services, by the way, are confidential. We know people are very concerned about that. If I call an attorney, does that mean that my information about whether I'm documented, undocumented, asylum, refugee status is going to be out there? Absolutely not. One of the things that guides us, we are sworn to keep our clients' confidences.
That's a legitimate and widespread fear, though. And how can you assure people that they aren't going to be in the crosshairs? Well, you can tell them it's a right. You can tell them that they will not be in the crosshairs, but they still feel that way.
Absolutely, and we've seen the impact of that in the community where, aside from the immigration work that we do, we handle employment rights cases, we handle landlord-tenant cases where a client is being evicted. And there are so many people that are afraid of communicating with, they're afraid of stepping outside of their doors. We just came from a meeting where one of our colleagues told us, she's a housing attorney, she was meeting with a client in person at her home to try and provide the services to avoid an eviction. And she had to spend a huge amount of time gaining her confidence. And even then, what the client did is slightly open the door, hand our attorney some papers, and then they spoke through the gate on the door. That's the level of fear that people have. But they have to remember that we take an oath to keep our clients' confidence. And it does not matter who comes knocking on our door asking for that information, we cannot reveal it.
I'm guessing you see this all the time. And I'm going to take a wild guess that somehow it affects you. And you think about the feelings that these people are having. And can you explain that?
Yeah, maybe not without getting emotional, but working with these people, with women, with children, with families, helping them through the immigration process, you know them, you know their resilience, you see them doing everything in their power to stay here, mostly fleeing some type of violence, looking for a better future for their children where they can be physically safe and build a life where their children can be safe and have access to an education. So when you're working hand in hand with these people and then seeing daily basically the attacks on this community from ICE and the escalated detention and just this climate of fear that's being created, I want to do my best to comfort them, but at the same time I don't know really what to say. It's very scary right now for a lot of people, and we're just trying to give them the best information they can to make decisions for themselves and their family during this difficult time.
Are there days that you're just heartbroken?
I've definitely cried several times over cases or because I know what my attorneys are going through at work. Everyone at Bet Tzedek is incredibly dedicated to what they do, and I know that each of their clients touches their heart deeply, and it's not just the clients, it's their moms, their dads, their family members, their aunts and uncles. To see this wave of fear, our clients are reaching out now for just some reassurance, which is difficult to provide.
You know, there's such a magnifying glass on the whole immigration picture. There may be things that people will look at and say, well, that can't be legal. Or is it legal? I mean, how do you draw the line on legal and not legal?
I mean, I think it's really easy. We know what is legal and not legal. We are the experts on immigration law. We know that it's lawful to be here and pursue lawful status in the United States. What's illegal is, I think, the deprivation of due process that we're seeing right now. That is an absolutely guaranteed constitutional right. So it's not challenging to know the law. It's challenging right now to know how it's going to be implemented and how we can work within it.
I'd like you to put out the website again and give us a couple closing thoughts, because this is such a monumental issue.
Yeah, so the website is bettzedek.org, BETTZEDEK.org, and we have numerous resources on that website. And I think one of the things that we want to make sure and leave people with is the importance of connecting with a barred attorney, an attorney that is barred under the California State Bar, that you do have rights. Those include the right to remain silent. We encourage people not to lie about their immigration status, but really to stay silent. Keep copies of their documents with them. And for everyone else, I think it's to understand that Los Angeles is a better community because of our immigrant populations. And they are entrepreneurs. They are a fabric of our community, and we're proud to have them as part of this community.
All right. Bottom line is, short answer?
Bottom line is, oh my gosh, I don't know. Please support our immigrant communities in Los Angeles. They mean so much to us. And if you're out there feeling scared, you're deserving of protection. You're deserving of being here and pursuing your case lawfully. And we're here to help you do that.
All right, Joanna Fluckey and Diego Cardenas, thanks so much for Cartagena. Sorry about that, and thanks so much for joining us. And coming up next on Fox 11 News In Depth, we look at some of the unique problems that are encountered by immigrant children and what happens to them if they're caught up in an ICE raid or their parents are, and what happens to those DACA kids. More coming up. Don't go away. Welcome back to Fox 11 News In Depth. I'm Hal Eisner, and we're talking with attorneys from Bet Tzedek about the immigration crisis. Lesly Mendoza is an attorney with Bet Tzedek who handles kinship care. And what is kinship care?
That's children that are with family members who are not their parents and sometimes need a guardianship. So we handle guardianships at Bet Tzedek with kids who are not necessarily undocumented, but also with kids who are undocumented.
So we're talking about children of immigrants.
Yes, that's part of the team, what we handle at the team.
And so that presents a unique situation, correct?
Yes.
And so sometimes they're the only American citizen in the family because they were born here.
Yes,
right?
we do have some.
So what happens in those cases?
For kids who are born in the United States, they are U.S. citizen and have a right to remain in the United States. So really what happens in certain situations are very different depending on the parents' decisions on whether they want their child to remain in the United States or to return with them to their home country if the parent is removed. So it really is a family matter, a family discussion, and it's something that is not, easy for families right now.
Well, what happens if a child's family is deported or arrested or seized?
Well, there are different scenarios. So for example, say the child is in school. Then if the parent is taken and detained, then hopefully the parent has already updated the emergency contact with the school so that the person who is on that emergency contact can go to the school and take the child with them. Usually what we recommend at Bet Tzedek is talking to a potential caregiver about, if I am detained or removed from the United States, can you please take care of my child during the detention or while I'm being removed from the United States?
So that's how it's decided whether they go with the parents or stay with others in the United States.
Not necessarily. I think if the child is with the parent at that time, that might be a very different scenario. We've seen recently a outcome where a parent was picked up with their child. So it really just depends on the situation. Every situation will be different. But if there's a child who's a U.S. citizen and is somehow, separated from the family, they can speak to the Department of Children and Family Services and say, hey, I know this person and they're my auntie and they're going to take care of me. Here's their phone number. Call them. And that is one way that they can reach a family member so that they can place them with someone that they know.
Could they end up in foster care?
They could. If there's no suitable caretaker, there is a chance that a child would end up in foster care.
So what about a child that's brought to the United States at a very young age? Can they be deported?
Well, with this administration, it is very likely that they'll attempt to do their best to remove the child, but I think it's important that the family members understand that the child also has due process rights, and they have a right to present a case with immigration court. And a lot of times they're already in immigration court. We have a lot of kids, for example, our kids, if they are with a caregiver who's not a parent, then they already have a case in immigration court, maybe because they've been abused or neglected in their home country, and they're fighting a case. So if someone comes and removes the adult who they're being taken care of, for example, the aunt or the grandmother, then this child still has a right to present their case in court. And if they wish, they can remain here to do so. But sometimes the ICE won't listen or pay attention or even consider whether the child has a claim. So it's important that the adults speak to kids and say, listen, if this happens, make sure you ask to speak to an adult, ask to speak to an attorney, because they also have their due rights and they should be protected.
Sometimes these kids are so young that they don't know what's going on.
Yes. Yes.
You know, how do you deal with that?
In those scenarios, it's a little bit more complicated, because then what we're looking at is probably a situation where the government will likely remove the child with the parent. But again, I think it's really important the parent voice their concern, saying like, my child, we left our country because if that's the case, we were afraid of X or Y. If you return, me and my child will be in grave danger. So it is very important for whoever is taking care of the child to ensure that they voice any concerns in returning to their home country or any other country that this government is trying to.
Do you represent these children as well as parents, or do they have to get their own representation somehow? Or
Bet Tzedek represents the children, the youth. So we represent youth who have come to the United States unaccompanied, so meaning by themselves or they've been separated from their parents. And for 99% of our kids, they're placed with people who are not their parents. But a lot of the children are released to their parents once they arrive to the United States.
Sounds like such a complicated situation.
It is very complicated, yeah. And it's not one way. You know, they do everything the same with all the children. Unfortunately, right now, it's really important for the parents to be prepared. So Bet Tzedek has a toolkit available so that the families can download them, start preparing in case of an emergency, and have these discussions with their children about who's going to take care of them, what's going to happen if they get detained. And we encourage them to do so, and also to realize that the kid might be so young that they might need to explain it in a different way.
All right. Lesly Mendoza, thanks so much for joining us. Fox 11 News in Depth will continue right after this break. Don't go away. That's it for this week's Fox 11 News in Depth. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.